So welcome to everyone this afternoon, and the program will more or less follow the same form as on previous occasions. I'll give a discourse for maybe 45 minutes or something. We'll have a short break, then there'll be a meditation period for half an hour or so, followed by a questions and answers session, discussion session. I think that most religious traditions tend to tell us how we should be, how we should act, how we shouldn't be, and how we shouldn't act. And then there's kind of a reward and punishment system appended to that. So if you are the sort of person you should be, you'll get a reward, and if you're the sort of person you shouldn't be, then you'll get punished. The difficulty, of course, is that there's probably none of us can claim to be how religions tell us we should be. So there's a gap. And unfortunately, at least in my somewhat limited study of these religious traditions, there's a discernible lack of clarity and detail regarding the practical steps by which you might transform yourself from how you are right now into the kind of person that your religion tells you you should be. Then there's a gap between the ideal and the reality, and a lack of information or understanding how to bridge that gap. Then the usual result is a crippling sense of guilt. Now, in the Buddhist tradition, the Buddha encourages us to look at experience. His teachings are, in many cases, more comparable to hypothesis, working hypothesis, which is giving us to make use of in our examination, our exploration of our humanity, rather than prescriptive terms with rewards and punishments. And so what we're interested in is what is this? What's going on? What's this all about? Why are things like this? And to what extent is our experience of life a fixed, unchangeable thing? And to what extent is it contingent? To what extent is the changing nature of our life and our experience a product of fate? To what extent is it completely random? To what extent is it conditioned? The Buddha's analysis and the Buddha's suggestion is that our experience, when looked at carefully, is impermanent, uncertain, but that uncertain, changing nature of our experience is conditioned, and certain elements of that conditioning are given. Certain elements of that conditioning can be affected by how we choose to live our lives. So the wise person is one that distinguishes those aspects of life which are given and doesn't struggle against them or fight against them unnecessarily, which leads to pain, despair in the end, but focuses attention on dealing with those elements of our life which do respond to intelligent, concerted effort. So the Buddha's teaching is teaching of effort, and the Buddha lived in a time which was probably a golden age of human intelligence and wisdom, one in which many different philosophical systems and ways of life flourished. And some of those philosophical teachings, which were quite popular, taught that effort is a waste of time. Basically everything is preordained. It's all fated, and no matter what you do, you're not really making any difference. You're just kidding yourself. It's going to happen anyway. And the Buddha rejected that. And his teaching was that how we choose to lead our life is meaningful. And it's what in fact gives our life integrity and true worth. Now one of the key teachings of the Buddha, one of the key premises of his teaching, is that we lack an accurate, authentic understanding of our own lives, of our body, of our mind, of the world we live in. And that we say co-emergent with, or an expression of that fundamental lack of understanding, or wrong understanding, is a kind of desire which we call tanha. And that the wise person seeks to develop wisdom and understanding in order to transcend the ignorance, and seeks to abandon the craving. So there are two major things to be addressed here. One is the ignorance and one is the craving. They are different aspects of the same thing. But the strategies which we employ to deal with them are slightly different, or different emphasis. Now, with the abandonment of ignorance, of craving, and the removal of ignorance, the mind doesn't enter into a featureless void or nothingness. the mind becomes filled with wisdom, and the wise form of desire, which is called chanta. The wise person realizes that the vast majority of our suffering in life is self-created and is completely unnecessary. And so the main thrust of the desire of a wise person, of an enlightened person, is to reveal to others how to stop creating unnecessarily that suffering for oneself and for others. And so in the text dealing with the nature of a Buddha, then the two virtues which are considered most prominent are wisdom and compassion. So with wisdom one understands the way things are, and the natural expression of the enlightened mind is the desire to help and to free others from suffering, which manifests as compassion. So we're not trying to become somebody special. If we begin spiritual life with a sense of self-aversion, self-loathing, or wishing to become someone better than we are already, then it's very likely we'll get caught into one of the spiritual traps and just be developing a more refined kind of conceit than we have to begin with. The practice is one of awakening to what's going on right now, and certain experiences which occur in the undistracted mind allow for a realignment of our hearts and minds with the way things are. We begin to see that a lot of things that we've taken for granted are in fact without foundation. Some of the most simple and obvious aspects of life, which we've never questioned, now seem highly questionable assumptions. Now, any penetrative analysis of the human condition, meaning any analysis which will lead to real change, real inner change, rather than some accumulation of philosophy or theory, has to take place in a mind which is able to sustain attention and clarity for a certain amount of time. We live in a society which seems to conspire to undermine the very virtues and qualities which we need to progress on this path. We live in a world where it is more and more easy to be distracted and to find distraction and to turn away from the more unappealing aspects of our life and to close our eyes to what's going on. For instance, in this day and age, we can, in Western countries, we can go right through our lives, or for many years, or maybe right through our lives without ever seeing a dead person, for instance. So which is a mixed blessing, to say the least. Having lived in the countryside in northeast Thailand and seen how natural and how unaffected children are by being around corpses, and the maturity that they show in the presence of the simple changes in life. I feel that they gain a great deal from that. So in the more complicated lives we lead, there's a certain removal from sort of the nitty-gritty of life. And the practice of meditation goes against or counters that stream, and we're learning how to be with experience in all of its facets, both the appealing and the unappealing, the attractive, the unattractive, the enjoyable, the unenjoyable. We're learning to be awake to experience of all kinds, not moving towards and trying to maximize pleasant experience, or moving away from rejecting or turning our back on unpleasant experience. So in the sitting practice, for instance, we're developing a new habit, a new model for relating to our life, one in which we are seeking to be awake, clearly present to experience, free from habitual emotional reactions to it. And it's only when we are able to sustain that kind of awareness over a period of time that the relationship between body, speech and mind, the process nature, the flowing nature of body and mind manifest to us, not as some exotic Eastern philosophy, but simply as an object of observation. We, for instance, clearly awake in the present moment, hear a sound. The sound arises, there's the registering of the sound, and if our mindfulness and awareness is weak, then the mind can latch on to that sound and then make a story out of it. Oh, that must be so-and-so, that means it's this time, and then we can go on from that to what we're having for lunch this evening, or what we had for lunch yesterday, and going on. We can go right around the world in a matter of a few seconds based upon a single impulse of sound to the ear. Whereas if the mind is clear, sharp, there's the registering of the sound, and the mind is still, is present to it, and that isn't impelled towards that inner chatter in the same way. Now, outside of meditation period, then that ability becomes to be with experience starts to appear more often. And here the parameters slightly different. Rather than simply being aware of the sound arising and passing away. Then there is the recognition, and then perhaps it might be appropriate to think, to plan, to reflect in some way. But the important point here is that the thinking is coming from inner freedom, not from external compulsion. So the path of meditation is the path of freedom, the path to freedom. And one of the first insights that arise as we turn our focus inwards is to what extent we are unfree, and how our thoughts, our emotions, our experiences are very largely the result of what's going on around us, that there's no inner core, that there's no real integrity or freedom. And it's that recognition of the radical lack of freedom and inner integrity, which is the impetus for a devoted, committed practice of meditation and awareness. So to increase, to allow the mind to be more and more free. The ability to do that is putting the work into recognizing and letting go of attachment to mental objects arising, passing away in the mind. As we develop meditation practice, we start to see results in our daily life. We should look for those results, and recognizing them, that also gives a boost to our efforts. We see that we're getting somewhere, something's happening. And initially, we begin to notice that our mind becomes distracted much less often than it used to. And because in meditation, when we realize that our mind is wandering, we patiently bring it back to our meditation object again and again and again, we develop what's really a kind of inner muscle. And that inner muscle starts to function in daily life, so that when we do become distracted, we realize more quickly, and we are able to re-establish our attention appropriately, more and more quickly, more and more easily. But just as the experiences in the meditative state start to affect the way that we live and relate to others and relate to situations in daily life, similarly our efforts in daily life help to support and to boost the power of the meditation. In daily life, we're not seeking that kind of inner stillness, but using experiences as food for reflection, and learning to incline